The security guard's hand was already reaching for Marcus Thompson's employee badge when the Billionaire CEO stood before him in the lobby, her eyes cold and unwavering. She'd just told him he was fired, effective immediately, after 15 years of dedicated service. But what happened next, the way Marcus responded in that impossible moment, would shake Victoria Chin to her core and change the trajectory of both their lives forever. If stories like this touch your heart, please subscribe to Sage Stories and hit that like button. We share real moments of human connection that remind us what truly matters. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts as this story unfolds. Marcus had arrived at Chin Industries that Tuesday morning the same way he had for the past 15 years, through the employee entrance at 6:30, a full hour before his shift officially started. He liked the quiet of the empty office, the way the morning light streamed through the glass windows of the accounting department where he worked. It gave him time to organize his desk, review the day's tasks, and prepare himself mentally for whatever challenges lay ahead. At 42 years old, Marcus had learned that preparation was everything, especially when you were raising 2 kids on your own. His daughter Emma was 12 now, brilliant and curious, always asking questions about everything from astronomy to why people made the choices they did. His son Tyler, just 9, had his mother's gentle spirit and a laugh that could light up the darkest days. Those days after Sarah passed, those were dark. Cancer had taken her 3 years ago, and Marcus had made a promise at her bedside that he would give their children the best life possible, that he would be enough for both of them. The job at Chin Industries wasn't glamorous. He processed accounts, managed spreadsheets, ensured invoices were accurate and payments went through on time. But it was steady, and the health insurance was good, and that mattered more than prestige when you had 2 growing kids who needed braces and soccer cleats and college funds. Marcus had turned down 2 promotions over the years because they would have required travel, and he'd made another promise to himself after Sarah died. He would never miss a parent-teacher conference, never skip a soccer game, never let his kids feel like they came second to anything. Victoria Chin had built her empire from nothing. The daughter of immigrants, she'd started with a single software contract in her garage and turned it into a multinational corporation worth billions. She was known for being brilliant, demanding, and absolutely ruthless when it came to business. She expected perfection, and she didn't tolerate weakness. At 56, she'd been featured on magazine covers, given commencement speeches at Ivy League universities, and sat on boards that shaped global policy. She was also profoundly lonely, though she would never have admitted it to anyone, least of all herself. That Tuesday morning, Victoria had arrived at headquarters with a plan. She'd been reading reports about employee loyalty, about how people's true character emerged under pressure. She wanted to test her management team, to see who had real integrity and who was just playing the game. She'd instructed her head of HR to randomly select mid-level employees and stage fake terminations, not to actually fire them, but to see how they reacted. Did they beg? Did they threaten legal action? Did they break down or lash out? She believed you could learn everything about a person by how they handled loss. Marcus's name came up in the random selection, employee number 7412. Victoria decided she would deliver this one personally. She wanted to observe, to study, to understand what 15 years of loyalty looked like when it was suddenly stripped away. She found him at his desk at 8:15, already deep into a spreadsheet analysis. She introduced herself, though of course he knew who she was, and asked him to follow her to a private conference room. He walked beside her, confused but not worried. In 15 years, he'd never had a negative review, never missed a deadline, never given anyone reason for concern. Victoria closed the door and didn't waste time. She told him that due to restructuring, his position was being eliminated. She said it was effective immediately, that security would escort him out, that his final paycheck would be mailed. She watched his face carefully, looking for the crack, the moment when composure would shatter. Marcus stood very still. His hand moved instinctively to his wallet, where he kept a small photo of Emma and Tyler, but he didn't take it out. He took a slow breath, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady. He said he understood that businesses had to make difficult decisions, and he thanked her for the opportunity he'd had. Then he asked if he could make one request, not for himself, but would it be possible for the health insurance to continue for just 90 days, long enough for him to find new coverage for his kids. Victoria had expected anger, denial, maybe tears. She'd seen grown men cry in her office before, had watched people beg for second chances. But this calm acceptance, this immediate concern not for himself but for his children, it caught her off guard. She found herself asking about his situation, and Marcus explained simply that he was a single father, that his wife had passed, that he just needed to make sure his kids stayed covered while he transitioned to new employment. Something shifted in the room. Victoria heard herself asking questions she hadn't planned to ask. What did he do at the company? How long had he been there? What were his kids' names? Marcus answered each question with the same quiet dignity, never complaining, never making excuses, just sharing facts. He mentioned that Emma wanted to be an engineer, that Tyler loved reading, that he coached their soccer teams on weekends. He said he'd always been grateful for the flexibility Chin Industries had given him to be present for his children. Victoria felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest, something uncomfortable and insistent. She thought about her own daughter, Rebecca, who was 28 now and barely spoke to her. Rebecca had once told her that she'd spent her childhood competing with board meetings and acquisition deals for her mother's attention, and that she'd always lost. Victoria had dismissed it as melodrama, but sitting across from this man who'd turned down promotions to attend soccer games, the words echoed differently. She stood abruptly and told Marcus to wait in the conference room. She walked out, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor, and went directly to HR. She asked them if this was real or part of the test. They confirmed it was the stage termination she'd ordered. She told them to cancel it immediately, all of them, every single fake firing. She said it was a terrible idea and should never have been approved. When she returned to the conference room, Marcus was sitting exactly where she'd left him, hands folded, expression peaceful despite what he believed had just happened to his life. Victoria sat down across from him and did something she almost never did in business. She apologized. She told him it had been a test, a misguided attempt to measure character, and that she'd learned more from his response than any test results could have shown her. She said his job was secure, that there would be no termination, and that she wanted to personally ensure his children's health coverage would never be a concern. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and then he did something that surprised them both. He smiled, genuinely smiled, and said he was glad it was a test, because it gave him a chance to respond the way he hoped he would, the way Sarah would have wanted him to. He said that anger and fear never made anything better, that the only thing you could really control in life was how you treated people, especially when things were hard. Victoria felt tears, actual tears, burning at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back and asked Marcus if he'd be willing to meet with her occasionally, not about work, but about perspective. She said she'd built an empire but might have missed some things that mattered along the way. Marcus agreed, and over the following months, their unlikely friendship reshaped both their lives. Victoria began leaving work in time for dinner. She called Rebecca and started the slow work of rebuilding their relationship. She implemented policies at Chin Industries that supported working parents, that honored the idea that people were more than their productivity. Marcus stayed in accounting, but Victoria made sure he knew his value extended far beyond spreadsheets. She attended one of Tyler's soccer games, sitting in the stands with other parents, feeling more connected to real life than she had in decades. She set up college funds for both Emma and Tyler, not as charity, but because she said they reminded her what the next generation could be if we invested in them properly. The test Victoria had designed to measure character had worked, just not in the way she'd intended. She'd learned that true strength wasn't about power or control, it was about grace under pressure, about keeping your humanity intact when everything was falling apart. Marcus had shown her that success wasn't measured in quarterly earnings or stock prices, but in the moments you showed up for the people who needed you, in the quiet dignity of doing what was right even when no one was watching. Sometimes the greatest lessons come from the simplest acts of kindness, from choosing compassion over bitterness, from responding to tests we didn't know we were taking with the best parts of who we are. Marcus never meant to change a billionaire's life. He was just being himself, trying to do right by his kids, holding on to the values that mattered most. But that's often how transformation happens, not through grand gestures or elaborate plans, but through ordinary people making extraordinary choices in everyday moments. If this story moved you, think about the tests life gives us each day, the moments when we get to choose who will be when things are difficult. Leave a comment and share a time when kindness changed your perspective or someone's grace under pressure inspired you. These stories matter because they remind us that we all have the power to impact each other's lives in profound ways, simply by choosing to respond with dignity, compassion, and hope, even when the world seems to be falling apart around us.